before I do that, I want to recognize the presence of Congressman.
Oh my God, the light is
And all protocols observed. It's a great honor for me to introduce this wonderful lady, Miss Caroline Rollins, our host tonight. Please give her a round of applause.
Thank you so much. If there's one thing that ICEHA is and has been from the beginning, and I hope will always be, it's about relationships. When we're working with children overseas, we know who they are. We have their pictures. We know their stories. I think every day I'll say, oh, I'm thinking of Sani today, or oh, you know, I'm thinking of ICEHA today, or oh, I'm thinking of this person and we need to get them medical care. But everything is personal in what we do. And the relationships that we've formed, all of you here today are friends. And I've met you through other friends. And we all do have a connection. And we are all working now for other friends around the world. And so, John, you're spot on about how I feel about you, and there's a special affinity for you, especially since you created our first video and had the understanding of the mission that we were doing and relate that so beautifully in your work. So I want to thank you. I also want to acknowledge Congressman Scott. Congressman Scott has been a mentor to me, and all of the Scott team back there have been mentors. And if it wasn't for them, actually, I wouldn't be here. If Bobby Scott didn't talk about the Youth Promise Act, or, you know, we must get into prevention. And in fact, if you look at ICEHA's model on our website, it is all about moving from rescue and rehabilitation to prevention. And we really feel that we can start to prevent terrorism by solving the root causes of that: poverty, hunger, abuse, discrimination. All of these things, if we can get rid of that, we have a really good chance of ending terrorism around the world. And I want to also take a moment to introduce our very, very special friend Tunde Adunlade. Did I do that right? Okay. He's been staying at our house for the last couple of days, and I cannot tell you what an honor it is to have him. I feel so inspired. I feel like a new person, and I feel like I have just been filled with more joy, and I didn't know that was possible, actually, because this work is full of joy for me. But Tunde is a very well-known artist, very well-respected around the world. His works are in the Smithsonian, and he has graciously donated some of his works for auction tonight. And he will also be performing for us. He's a very talented drummer, as we learned yesterday, and singer and poet, and really brings the art to the healing aspect of what we're doing. So now I have to put my glasses on. Okay. So I want to mention briefly our sponsors for this event: Education Global Access Program, my daughter Shannon, who I'm very proud of. She also brought an organization called CUEPA to the table, who helps to educate those to get their GED, those who've not been able to get education otherwise, and helps get those people in education and help them, you know, see brighter futures ahead. The Honoré family actually donated, and the Honoré family has also donated these bronze castings here, and you'll be learning more about them. But the Honoré family is a royal family from Benin. And these castings are very, very special. They're a super, super duper secret method that we can't know about. And when I met the chief here a few weeks ago at the Smithsonian, he wanted to be part of our program here and donated these for auction tonight. I also want to thank our people on the computer back there, James and Peter. They are volunteers from Ruston. They are my computer gurus, my website gurus. They are fabulous young men, and if you ever want a computer guru, you can hire those guys. Are it. I'm telling And before I start briefly telling a little bit about our work, I want to present a very special award tonight to someone who absolutely without on my team none of this would have been possible. Omataya, would you please come up?
Wow.
Yesterday, this is a handmade kente. It's made by a 17-year-old boy in Ghana, and he is weaving his way into and through high school. This is how he's saving money and supporting his family. Without this work, he would have no way to go to school. And what he doesn't realize is that when he gets the acceptance into high school, he has a full scholarship from ICEHA. But kente is very special, and as Tayo presented one yesterday to one of our partners, she pointed out that this is something that kings wear. And I see that this is extremely fitting for this elegant, brilliant, talented young woman. Thank you so much. Okay, now all of that is out of the way. I just want to mention a couple things of what we're doing here. We are in several countries, and we are helping all sorts of children who cannot go to school. Some of them cannot eat. Some of them have no beds or blankets. Some of them have to sleep in their mother's loincloth that she wore during the day. We're focusing tonight on child survivors of Boko Haram. We know right now in Nigeria, the numbers say there's 1.5 million IDPs, that's internally displaced persons. That's not true. That's about 10% of the real number. That number is the IDPs in the camps. The majority of the IDPs have escaped and are living in villages, and poor villagers have taken them in and are suffering themselves. And so we are going into village by village and assessing the needs and helping getting food, helping getting livestock, moving to entrepreneurship, and providing education, medical care. We are doing everything we can on a locally tailored basis, which is what I learned from working with Congressman Scott. Everything must be locally tailored. And that's what we're doing, village by village. And we also know that over 900 schools in Adamawa State alone have been destroyed because of the insurgency. And we also know that it's about 12.5 million school-age children in Nigeria are not in school. We need to fix that, and ICEHA is working on that every day, and again, coming up with locally tailored solutions, because there are different tribes and different locations, and the solutions all have to be different. So that's what we're doing, that's our work, and the need is great. And unless you've seen some of the pictures of some of these children, it doesn't tug at your heart, and it tugs at mine every day. So I personally am invested in these children and making sure that every dollar gets to them. I get photos of every distribution. I test every partner on the ground thoroughly before they get more. So you can be assured that your money is not going to be diverted. And it also goes to promoting the art and the artists. All of these artists are African artists. So it's full circle, artists helping artists. And I just want to say I am so thankful that you are all here to share this with us and to be part of the solution. So I want to thank you so much for that. I also want to bring up the president of our board, Mr. Ron Legrand. Ron, would you come up, please? Ron and I worked together starting in the House Judiciary, and we both worked with Congressman Scott and the Scott team back there, and we both have an affinity, and we both still feel we're all family, and so it's real special that you all are here. And I'm going to hand the microphone over to Ron as president of our organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. There's not really much that I can say that Carolyn hasn't already said. I have to tell you, when Carolyn first came to me over a year ago and just talked about this vision that she had of just international, global aid and relief to victims of terrorism and torture. I was immediately, no, I was already in awe of Carolyn, and I was even more in awe of her because of that vision, because of the heart and the compassion that she expressed toward people whom she didn't even know. We don't have to talk about what's happening with respect to Boko Haram. We hear about it, we see it almost every day. The pictures and the reports are horrific. And I personally thank each and every one of you for being here, because in doing so, you are furthering the work of ICEHA, and I'm asking you to do something else. I'm asking you to continue to support the work. I'm asking you to spread the word, because you are witness to what can happen when people with good minds and good hearts come together to support an outstanding organization and an outstanding cause. Without further ado, because I know that some of you, if you're like me, you're hungry and you want to get on to dinner, I have the honor of introducing someone who has been a friend, a fraternity brother, a mentor, a source of inspiration for me for over 40 years. And yeah, I'm going to tell it. I'm going to tell it. Picture me as a 19-year-old freshman at Boston College. And that's where I was when I met Congressman Bobby Scott, who was at DC Law School. When Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, the fraternity of Dr. Martin Luther King and Thurgood Marshall, invited us to what was called the Smoker, an invitation to learn about the fraternity, Bobby Scott was one of the speakers, and I was inspired by him. So it goes back to that point. I'm going to share a little bit of his bio with you. Carolyn has already talked about the Scott team, and every member of the Scott team can talk about the inspiration, the leadership that he provides, the courage that he demonstrates, and the integrity that he demonstrates on a daily basis. Congressman Bobby Scott is a man of principle. He stands up for what he believes, even if he is the only man standing in the room. He does, okay? Congressman Robert C. Bobby Scott is currently serving his 12th term representing the citizens of Virginia's 3rd Congressional District in Congress. Prior to serving in Congress, he served in the Virginia House of Delegates and in the Senate of Virginia. Congressman Scott currently serves as the ranking member on the House Committee on Education and the Workforce. In this capacity, as the senior Democrat on the committee, he is leading the fight for access to quality early, secondary, and higher education for all of America's children. Additionally, he is working to ensure that American workers are treated fairly, paid a decent wage, given a safe working environment, and provided access to affordable health care. Additionally, Congressman Scott is a recognized leader on efforts to pass comprehensive criminal justice reform and crime prevention legislation. Toward that end, he has sponsored the Youth Promise Act, which will provide resources to state and local governments for evidence-based strategies and programs to prevent juvenile crime. In 2010, Congressman Scott was recognized by The Hill, a Capitol Hill newspaper, as one of the 25 hardest working members of Congress. And I can attest to that. I've had the experience of sitting down with Congressman Scott as he went page by page through the Youth Promise Act, which has been introduced a couple of times in Congress, and he goes through it meticulously, and you can pick up the slightest change in wording. Members of the Scott team, raise your hand if you understand and agree with me. The Hill later recognized Congressman Scott in 2012 as one of Capitol Hill's 50 most beautiful people. Look at him. He's still one of the hill's most beautiful people.
Roger would too, by the way.
Congressman Scott was born on April 30th, 1947 in Washington, D.C. and grew up in Newport News, Virginia, where he still resides today. He is a graduate of Harvard College and Boston College Law School. He also served in Massachusetts National Guard and the United States Army Reserve. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure tonight.
Thank you, Ron. You know, you gave this elongated introduction right after they said the speeches are going to be brief, so you didn't have to elongate the speech. It is a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Carolyn for your leadership. Ron on the board, but Carolyn doing all the work. In the International Coalition to Eradicate Hunger and Abuse. And as you pointed out, one of the ways to eradicate it is to prevent it from happening in the first place. I've served on the Education Committee and the Judiciary Committee throughout the time in Congress, and we've learned that if you do better work in education in the workforce, get young people on the right track to getting a good education and a good job, then you have less work to do in the criminal justice system because they're just not going to be there. And so when you start talking about hunger and abuse, the prevention of hunger and abuse is really the most effective way to deal with it. And the Youth Promise Act model, where you first of all study what the problem is and come up with an evidence-based, locally tailored solution. And then what we do in the Youth Promise Act is, and we're talking about gang violence, is as you implement the plan, make sure you evaluate it, make sure it's working, and finally you know you're going to save more money than you spend in criminal justice, so you give people who are saving the money to ante it back up to keep the programs going. So if you get funded once, you want to be able to keep going. That Youth Promise Act approach to hunger and abuse is what the International Coalition is doing. And I want to thank you, Carolyn, for taking that a step forward and helping young children all over the world, particularly in Africa. And the work that you do, hooking young children up so that